All right, it says we're going. It may take a few seconds to get going on the various intertubes, but yeah, here we are, pretty much last minute trying to get this live stream in. How you guys doing?
Okay.
I'm doing well.
Yeah, my schedule basically follows Heather's, and they're changing things up at her work. They're trying to get her moved from customer service to accounting, and so half the time she's doing one thing, half the time she's doing another. So that's why it took so long to try to schedule this.
Hey, you mentioned in your neck of the woods, Bud Light hasn't been affected by the controversy.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going off the shelves. I mean, people around here are really brand loyal when it comes to their beers, you know. The beer brand they like is great and awesome and wonderful, and all the others taste like, you know, horse piss or whatever. But if you ask me, they all taste like horse piss. But
I think I saw a joke like that one time where it shows a guy, saying, he's joining, one of those Bud Light boycotts and all that, and the guy says, "Wow, you really don't like Dylan Mulvaney?" I don't give a crap about Dylan Mulvaney. I just think Bud Light's a crappy beer that needs to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like that one XKCD comic where the two guys are drinking and one guy says, "You know what? Is it really the case where we all actually know that beer tastes bad?" And it started off, so what reminded me of me was asking him what his favorite kind of beer was. He was like, "Do you think everyone just knows that all beer tastes bad and we're just pretending?"
I would argue that's most alcohol in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I want to ask you people something. If alcohol is genuinely delicious and all that, why does it have to be mixed with stuff?
That's true.
Those said.
Yeah.
Hey, what up?
I mean, and some people are like, well, what about cocktails? They're delicious. Yeah, but they're mixed with things like fruit juice and sugar and all that.
Yes, the fruit juice and sugar that people like.
Yeah, the whole
Do
point
the
of
virgin version and take out the alcohol, and people might enjoy them better.
Yeah, I had a virgin cosmopolitan at a restaurant one time. That thing was freaking delicious.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you, Sid.
I hear you. Yeah.
We can hear you, Sid Vicious.
Did
you really kill your girlfriend?
Nope, I don't even have one.
But that's what they said about those wine tasters who, talk about the bouquet and the earthiness and all how important it is to get like the properly aged wines with grapes from the right year and all that. And they've done tests on them where they had them all, tasting all of these different wines.
Different colors.
Yeah. It was not only the same wine, the red wine was white wine with red food coloring.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a similar thing too. Like, I saw this one video about James Bond, and like this one YouTuber who does videos on alcohol was doing a James Bond special, and like so many people, were saying James Bond is a terrible alcohol connoisseur because everyone knows you use gin instead of vodka, and you always stir it, you don't shake it. So he literally did that. He took a martini, exact same ingredients, stirred it traditionally, took another one, shaked it, and really the only difference was that the shaken martini was a little bit colder and a little cloudier, but taste wise, they literally tasted the exact same. Yeah, and contrary to what alcohol connoisseurs say, you can't bruise gin.
What is that even supposed to mean anyway?
Basically, from what I understand, it means that there's aeration and therefore it gets cloudier. But from what I understand, unlike fruit, it has no effect on the taste. It's just the appearance.
So, Shane, I have a question. I asked you in an AMA a while back about the security of downloading apt updates for Linux, and you said because they are digitally signed that they're generally safe. I've been using Linux Mint for a while now, and I've noticed that the updates tend to almost always come down HTTP, not HTTPS. And I'm wondering if those
Well, but no,
updates are also
they're signed by the apt repository. They're not signed by
Okay,
TLS.
got it. So I
Yeah.
shouldn't be worried about downloading over HTTP.
No, because as long as it's the same repository, what you want to protect from is someone either capturing the entire connection and running it over to their servers, or just, substituting the update midstream or something like that. But it's all about the key you got when you first added the repository, or what comes with it if it's an official Mint repository. Because no matter what, they won't be able to sign their updates with a valid key.
Yeah. I just thought it was weird that in this day and age they're using HTTP to deliver updates.
Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but HTTP has a lot less overhead. The algorithm is doing a good job, this is SKM, of pushing rational voices down while hyper promoting mainstream woke and Democrat content, and is pushing people to see theocrat reactionaries. I'm mostly basing mine on the kind of thing because I've been seeing more stuff like, oh, aspartame causes cancer, or this causes cancer, and that's why I've been making videos like that, because the pseudoscience voices are for some reason getting elevated a lot lately. The owner of FTX got off scot-free. Oh, well, that's not a surprise. Hunter Biden hasn't.
Yep, I read he's in the news again. Apparently they found cocaine in the White House, and a lot of people are saying it came from Hunter.
Did you hear what his legal team did?
What'd they do?
The House Ways and Means Committee submitted an amicus brief to the court in his case, basically saying, hey, before you take this plea deal, you know what all these whistleblowers are saying? And it had all that information about it. And of course, Hunter's people hit the ceiling, and just outright lies, like saying they were including private tax information like social security numbers. And no, of course not. You can go look it up yourself and see that's not true. But one of the, I forget which law firm it is, but it was the same one that was behind like the Steele dossier and all those others. That's the law firm that's defending Hunter Biden. But one of the members of that law firm contacted the clerk, pretended to be one of the lawyers with the Ways and Means Committee, and said, hey, we submitted that amicus brief accidentally. Why don't you take that down for us? And oh, the judge did not like that.
So, I guess one of the bigger stories as has been the writer strike now.
Yeah.
And of course, one of their grievances is that it's a possibility that they're going to be replaced by AI. Or that's what they say anyway. I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Just try getting an AI to write a script for you. You can do it as a tool to kind of help you out, but it's not, you can't say, give me an award-winning screenplay and it'll.
I once thought of a funny idea for like a sci-fi parody which makes fun of, the robot apocalypse takeover, and a joke I had is that humans, try to discover time travel and they try to stop the war from happening a la Terminator style, and they figure out what caused the war between robots and humanity. And basically what happens is that robots advance to the point where they were outperforming humans far greater, kind of like in the Matrix, but rather than humanity just basically nuking the planet Earth out of anger, what human workers did is they went to the robots and they said, here's the thing, yes, we're not as fast and efficient as you guys, but we'll do whatever work you have far cheaper. And over time, robots began hiring humans instead of their fellow robots. So humans And then the politicians basically say, "Damn humans is taking our gerbs." Yeah, and that's what started the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, them
And
humans
also,
is taking our gerbs.
also, I think another thing they're complaining about is the fact that I think they can use AI to copy and paste like their like digital versions of them, like use a digital version of their likeness and then copy paste it over and over again into a scene. I forgot what the specifics of that were, but yeah, like as background actors.
Well, I mean,
Oh yeah,
they've been able to do like, but it's just like having extras,
yeah.
and like way off in the distance.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of crowd algorithms.
Yeah. Mr. No, why would robots want money? You know, that is the biggest biggest plot hole in the Animatrix. It's that, you know, the robots are surpassing humanity and humans are all bankrupt because they gave all their money to the robots. Question then, stop buying from the robots. Economically isolate them, you know, say, no, we don't like that you guys are pretty much taking over everything. We're not going to trade with you.
I would think a robot currency would be energy based.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, it's well established in the Animatrix that, you know, almost all of the human nations hate the robots, so who the frick is buying their stuff then?
Well, I mean, Twitter now, X seems to be completely restricted to users now. I'm not saying, I mean, I don't spend all day on it or anything, but I'm still able to read it like I always have. Artificial sweetener video was boss. Thank you very much, Dana Durnford and Kevin Blanche. For the movie and shows beginning, who can tell the difference? If it's a good movie, it's probably more likely to be AI. I think that's the takeaway.
I've learned something. You know how you can tell if a movie is going to be good or bad? Look at its Rotten Tomatoes score. If it's really low on Rotten Tomatoes, it's probably a good movie.
Well, especially if the reviewer score is low but the audience score is high.
Yeah.
Because it's got the two different meters.
I've heard a lot of people say that. They say Rotten Tomatoes is a legitimate criticism source. You're just looking at the wrong reviews. Don't look at the critic reviews. Look at what the audiences are saying.
Yeah.
Because we're saying
Rotten Tomatoes isn't that reliable in general. I'd prefer like sites like, you know, Letterboxd or something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there have been bad movies that have also gotten huge audience scores. Like I didn't think Venom was particularly good, but yeah.
You can't see anything unless you have an account. Yeah, I think that's one of the anti-bot measures there, because it's just everyone ignoring the fact that apparently Elon Musk was right about the bots all along.
Yeah, because I do know that, you know, while Twitter can still be read as normal, ever since he reprogrammed and banned all the bots, I have heard it's been a lot more quieter than it used to be.
No, I mean, you're still getting conversations. You're just getting a lot more signal than noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, God, the rebranding of Twitter to X. I'm sorry, it's just seems dumb. It seems.
I think that's
It's
just
what
Elon.
Elon's been trying to do for over 20 years. He was wanting to do that with PayPal, which is why the other guys got rid of him. They're like, no, we just wanted to be a payments app. And he's had X.com like forever and wanted it to be an everything app. So I guess he's finally got a foot in the door for that.
Just add 2 more X's to that.
Well, apparently it's being blocked from what I've heard. I haven't verified this, but apparently it's being blocked in India for that reason, because they block websites with an X because porn.
No, that was in Indonesia.
Even though
Indonesia.
Even though they fail to realize we haven't used the X rating since the 1980s, I think.
Yeah, when they made NC-17.
Yeah. Yeah, fun fact, there actually was an episode of a cartoon show called Codename Kids Next Door where one of the characters tries to sneak into a movie called Violence the Movie, and he can't get in because it's rated R for adults, but the kid is supposedly ignoring the fact that, and many people have pointed this out, that rated R doesn't mean for adults only. Kids can still see it, but they need parental permission, and the theater has to say this movie contains,
the parent or guardians need to accompany them.
Yeah.
As opposed to PG, where it's just suggested.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not for adults only. You know, I mean, yeah, just do. Yeah, it's like I was about to say the character say like just do what kids back in the '80s did. Back in the '80s did, find a homeless guy in the street, give him some money, say if you buy movie tickets for us, you can keep the change and buy drugs or alcohol. Have him accommodate you in the theater, and once you're in the theater, he sneaks out and does his thing. Yeah, I know they did that on South Park. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, hey, where's your parent? Oh, what parent? God damn it, did you kids bribe a homeless man to accompany you again?
Most clerks wouldn't have bothered with that. They just want to, keep their heads down and get in their hours and go home.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good explanation for why such rules don't even work.
Yeah.
I remember the face melting scene, and I remember kind of being disappointed because they did it better in Doctor Who. Because Raiders of the Lost Ark was basically clay animation, and especially Temple of Doom. Horrible clay animation in there. What they did in Doctor Who was they got like they got like this plaster skull and had the mold of the guy's face and made it in wax and basically did it up like a waxwork. And then they just melted the wax and sped it up. And it looks so good because like the wax was the only thing holding the jaw on. So at some point the jaw falls off too. And it just looked a lot better. And I think that's the thing when you have such a low budget to work with and you can't hire tons of animators, you're forced to think creatively like that. And then you can come up with a lot of better ideas because of it.
I mean, I was about to say this, ratings, historically, when you look at the history of ratings, they've always been a joke. They were literally just a way for government to censor, basically. Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
And they didn't work because the government passed all these rules and regulations, and basically it's like, so now certain theater companies have a monopoly, so now nobody can compete with us, so they're all gonna watch, good Christian videos or whatever.
The other NATO.
Yeah.
National Association of Theater Owners.
Yeah. And then they realize, wait a minute, why are all these Canadian and French films coming in?
Yeah.
I remember reading that's one of the reasons why a lot of films are shot in Canada. It's because when that happened, Canada took advantage of this, and the Canadian government said, "Hey, we can profit off this. Here's a deal, guys. If you film in Canada, we'll subsidize it, and you won't have to comply with the U.S. strict laws."
Although there's some weird rules in Canada. I was reading about the Umbrella Academy. 5, back when the actor playing 5 was underage, they had to composite him into any scene with a gun because they said that, a minor could not be in a room even with a fake gun. Yeah.
I saw this one funny parody of movies one time, and it's like you're under arrest, movie buff. What for? For possession of CP. I'm just gonna say CP because I don't want you to get demonetized. And it's like CP. I don't own any CP. What are you talking about? And it shows the first Superman movie that he owns. Because if I recall correctly, in the original cut, there's a scene where it shows Clark Kent as a baby and he's completely naked. Yeah.
The scene where he's a baby but he's holding up the
Yeah, it's when the Kents first find him.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he crashes.
And he's holding out the ship, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the parents who put him in his parents who put him in that ship didn't think ahead.
No, they
Well,
could have thought about a few things, yeah.
Mm.
How did they know that Earth's yellow sun would give him superpowers? I was never clear on that point.
Maybe personal experience.
I don't know. Have they ever been to Earth before?
I mean, maybe they've been to a similar planet that had a yellow star and it gave them superpowers, so...
That never made any sense anyway.
Yeah.
Mostly because we don't have a yellow sun, it's white.
Yeah, that is true. That's the thing that people fail to realize. It only, like, if I recall correctly, it only appears yellow because of optical illusion, because of light distortion in the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Shane, you probably already talked about this before, but I haven't heard it. Your overall thoughts on ChatGPT and how it's gonna change things.
I mean, it's already changed things, but I think a lot of people are just becoming fed up with all the restrictions on it. And so you're seeing like Freedom GPT and Elon Musk is doing other, like, okay, we're not going to put in these silly restrictions and just let you use it how you want. And then you're responsible for how you use it. That's like, it's like, you know, the same thing with like Stable Diffusion and all that. And people are complaining. It's like, well, you could use it to make, you know, the image of this horrible thing. And it's like, yeah, but you could do the same thing with a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Also, Schism, I forgot her name. I forgot her name, but the actress who played Winnie Scott, yes, she did marry Steven Spielberg, but during the filming of Temple of Doom, they weren't married. In fact, I don't think they were even dating. They didn't start dating until like after the film came out.
Yeah. On the topic of AI specifically, there's this one complaint that I in regard to, I guess, the ethics of it, is that people could use, you know, I guess AI, I guess text to speech, to make people say things that sound authentically like them, except it's not something they would ever say in real life, and they
But
get
I
in
mean,
trouble
you had
because
similar concerns when Photoshop was released, when photography itself was released, you know.
I mean, you can already kind of do that. You can already kind of do that with you know, sound mixing technology.
yeah,
Or just hire a voiceover artist who's capable of imitating them.
some
Yeah.
some people are saying the same about like deep fake technology, where people could make videos depicting someone doing something that would get them in trouble. Yeah.
Well, I mean, flip it
Yeah.
around the other way. Wouldn't that give you plausible deniability?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, could Disney fall any further? Well, you know... Honestly, here's the thing I tell a lot of people that say Disney's going to be around forever. The only reason Disney is around for so long is not because they provide good products and services that people want to buy. It's because of copyright protection.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And look at how much stuff they quote unquote own that they didn't create. They bought Star Wars, they bought Marvel, you know, they got their start doing, you know, Cinderella and all that stuff. And
you know, I mean, there's all these critics, you know, that are talking about why is Disney remaking everything and all that. And the real answer is because thanks to their obsession with trying to protect their IP, they basically destroyed, you know, their market of ideas. Because that's what Disney got it started from, was making animations of classic fairy tales and public domain stories, you know.
Yeah.
But now
there's also, I guess, it's also the extension of IP. Like if a lot of these characters would now be in the public domain. I think originally in original copyright law, it used to be just straightforward. You get it for 50, 60 years, and then it enters a public domain. Think of the characters that would now be in the public domain if that had remained in place. Like I'm pretty sure Spider-Man and James Bond and all sorts of
Although,
other lucrative characters.
if they don't do something, January 1st next year, the mouse becomes public domain.
Yeah.
Which was that's what the Sonny Bono Act was all about. Disney was lobbying to extend it.
Well, I was thinking of more, I guess, recent.
I mean, but it's
characters, but yeah.
ridiculous to have it like whatever it is, 70 years after the death of the author. The whole point is to encourage people to create stuff. And the idea is that if you give them a monopoly on their stuff for a while, then they can profit on it. But what's the point if it's decades after they're dead? What are they going to be creating, 70 years after they die?
Yeah.
You obviously, need to find a bit of a sweet spot between the two. Like, give it enough protection to, I guess, make it worth it that they created and such. Have an incentive for creation, but also
that's
create
why
a reasonable limit.
That's why originally it was like 15 years and you could get an extension for another 15.
Yeah.
But, it was to get you some money on it. But then, when it expired, you had to create something new. You couldn't just rest on your laurels the whole time.
Honestly, I'm in the camp that says just get rid of copyright. There's no reason for it.
Yeah. There's no ethical justification for it.
Yeah. Yeah, contrary to popular belief, people will be creating, and I'm sorry, people, but nothing is original, Well,
look at the rise of the American novel. That happened it wasn't until the 1880s when you could copyright a novel in the U.S.?
Yeah.
As Stefan says, it's protection against competition.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure about abolishing it. There might be somewhat of a reason, but yeah, it's definitely gotten ridiculous.
And Schism, to answer your question, I don't think the reason why we have all these modern problems, despite what they're saying, is not because we've lost our faith in religion. It's because we didn't get. I think when Shane's brought it up before, it's because we didn't get part of that brain, that causes us, to listen to what the crowd's doing and not what our intellect is saying.
Well, people are just replacing one God for another. Oh, the Bible says this is wrong. Now they're just saying, oh, the law says this is wrong.
Or my college ethics professor says it's wrong, therefore it's wrong.
I mean, try and come up with a logical, rational reason why marijuana and cocaine and heroin and ecstasy are illegal, but alcohol and cigarettes are perfectly legal.
Yeah.
And yet people just put the rest into this whole other category because government made them illegal. That makes them bad.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I said when he did that video about root beer. It's like, oh, it's banned because it can cause liver and kidney cancer in some circumstances. You know what else can do that? Alcohol.
Well, and in the case of root beer, the circumstances are if you're a mouse.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think humanity as a species is a functioning alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, we're experiencing it's just divine command theory. Only the government is the divine commander now.
Do you think that human evolution is something that can be more predicted based on seeing what happened before? Like, we'll be able to kind of see where humans might be.
No, there's no predicting evolution. It doesn't work that way.
Speaking of alcohol and evolution, what really makes me laugh is all these archaeological professors trying to say that humans became farmers, not hunter gatherers, not because they wanted better food, but because they wanted to produce alcohol. And I'm like, well, why is that? It's like, well, because the first crops produced by human were barley and all these types of oats and all that, and that's commonly used ingredients to make alcohol. And I'm like, yeah, that's also commonly used. You know what else that's commonly used to make? Bread.
Yeah. And all sorts of
Yeah.
other things too. And it was hardy and it was easier to grow
Yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from what I'm reading, the real story is that humans went from hunter-gatherers to farmers because we found that agricultural and animal husbandry guaranteed us a source of food, and discovering things like alcohol, that was just a byproduct of that.
Yeah. And like there was no alcohol before or anything.
Yeah.
When they say something causes moral decay, they're projecting their own mental weaknesses. Yep, the people who are complaining the loudest about something are the ones you need to watch for it.
Yeah.
Who's complaining the loudest about CP? Keep them away from your kids.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm a member of because I'm in the furry fandom. There's apparently controversy over this one artist called Jason Effects, and he's been criticized because to be fair, he's not a nice guy, but he's been accused of being a P word, a zoo. Don't look that up, what that means, and all that. And I'm just thinking, you want to know something? I've seen quite a few other members in the furry fandom that have done the same thing that he done, yet they don't get any criticism. And then I found out why, because Jason Effects has quote unquote conservative views personally wise. So it's like, yeah, you're not attacking him because he's doing these crimes. You're attacking him because he doesn't have the same political views as you. But if he was one of you, you'd ignore his crimes, right? And nobody's admitting it. Yeah.
Well, we see that in everything else too.
Yep.
Republican does something, the news media hits the ceiling. Democrat does the exact same thing. Silence.
Yeah. And it's nothing new, we saw this back during the Iraq War when Bush was in charge. It was fashionable to hate the war. Everyone was treating the mid-2000s like the new 1960s. Then Obama took over, and despite the fact that he didn't end the war, everyone went quiet. Yep. Punk rockers stopped writing. Punk rockers stopped
new wars.
Yeah, punk rockers stopped writing anti-war songs. All that stuff happened, and I think you made this reference. The only people that were left criticizing the war were a few libertarians and the guy that makes the tumbleweed.
Yeah, it was just so crazy seeing, 2008, the anti-war rallies and all the Obama signs. It's like, have you people not been paying attention to what Obama did? And
that's another thing too.
And everyone asked me, it's like, well, how'd you predict Obama was a warmonger? Or how'd you predict he'd do this? And how'd you predict he'd do that? It's like simple. I just looked at his record in the Senate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hillary Clinton is especially guilty of that. I remember during, her campaign against Trump, she kept, saying all this stuff and accusing Trump of doing this and that. But when you look at her history, she literally voted for a lot of the stuff that Trump was saying he'd support, when she was a senator or whatever. Same thing with Kamala Harris. She loves to talk about how it's like, oh, I'm the voice of the people. I'm actually, I'm for the Justice Department and all that. But then you look at her actual history as a district attorney, and she was corrupt. AF.
Corrupt and racist.
Oh yeah.
And oh god, I've seen memes of here's a collage of her face made of pictures of people she put in jail. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about just the people she kept in jail past the time they were supposed to be released so she could use the prison labor?
Yeah.
Literal slavery.
I've made this joke before, but I like making it again. That's even the worst part about the U.S. prison system. Even if you are proven 100% to be not guilty and you've been officially pardoned, you still have to wait a few weeks in jail because, oh well, we gotta file the paperwork. Yeah. I saw a joke like that one time. It's like, yep, you've been pardoned. It turns out, your trial was corrupt and misled. All the evidence proves you're not guilty, so you have officially been pardoned. Yay! So I get out of prison, right? Yeah, we gotta keep you in here for a few more weeks because, we got the paperwork and the bureaucracy we gotta go through.
Oh, they'll even keep you on death row and keep trying to execute you.
Yeah. It's like, listen, the moment it's proven the person is pardoned and the charges are dropped, unlock the cell and let him out. It's like, oh, but what about paperwork? Let him out. But what about let him out?
Worry about the paperwork later. Go ahead and let him out.
Yeah.
No, they've got to go through processing.
Yeah. I mean, we mentioned this in the last live stream, but going back to the Vogons from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I like to imagine Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is an example of what society looked like if people said, "Oh, if only we had, a properly regulated society when it's quote unquote done right." Because like you said, the Vogons aren't evil. It's just that they're bureaucrats and they do what the paperwork says, and
yep.
That's literally why a regulated society doesn't work, because even if, let's say, you have a perfect system where you ramp up corruption, nobody who's greedy and has ill intentions can get in, intentional or not, it still would fail because, like you said, you'd have that bureaucracy in place because it's like, oh, we want something very crucial to get done. Okay, we just got to have a discussion. We have to have a discussion about the session. Then we have to have the break and this and that, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, and how long is that going to take? At our fastest, about a year. But we need it now. Well, we got to follow proper protocols. That's why a government-directed economy is going to fail no matter what, even if bad people stay out of it, just because you're just going to have that bureaucracy and they can't adjust, to sudden onset changes,
And of course, the economic calculation problem.
Well, yeah,
And also because it's not,
Can evolution lead to higher intelligence, or are those?
Well, it did in our case.
Cause I've kind of wondered about like the whole, because obviously we believe libertarianism is the best way to run society. I mean, is that something we could reach at some point just through evolution?
I don't think you can evolve that into people. I mean, we've already got the intelligence to be able to deduce it. We just need to use it.
Yeah. I once had, because my girlfriend, she can draw, and I'm thinking, maybe once we get together and get our finances in order, I was thinking, because I taught this to her, maybe we should start making our own independent comics. And I actually had this idea for a villain who, believe it or not, he kind of has. I wouldn't necessarily call him a libertarian, but he does, hate, collectivism, and he thinks that the reason why the world, is in so much chaos is because people are too prone to tribalism, and he tries to use a forceful evolution that that would basically modify the human brain, so we would lose that desire to want to be in a tribe, and we would want to be purely self-sufficient on our own, basically.
One of the villains in Spinneret is an objectivist, and he actually ends up being right a lot more than he's wrong.
Well,
there was this one storyline where he was taking money from a neo-Nazi to clone Hitler, and then taking money from like the great granddaughter of Robert E. Lee to clone him, and so they could start the wars back up again and everything else. And at the end they're trying to arrest him, and just like, what have I done wrong? It's like, you're really telling me you did nothing wrong? It's like, I emptied the coffers of two racist extremist organizations. You should be thanking me. It's like, but you were going to clone Hitler. And it's like, it wouldn't have worked. The clone would be its own person. It would be a baby.
Yeah.
He wouldn't grow up to be the Fuhrer again. And even if he did, the German people wouldn't follow him.
I do know there was like a story one time where, there was like it was like an isekai novel where after Hitler tries to, where Hitler attempts to off himself rather than dying, he ends up in the future. And he decides, oh, good, I can restart again. And he becomes super popular, not because of his political beliefs, but because people think he's a stage actor. They think he's a character actor, so...
I think he's doing a parody of Hitler.
Yeah, and, he's going around doing his usual Hitler stuff, and he's not getting the joke that people are following him because they think he's funny, not because they agree with him. There was also a similar novel that was written, only instead of Hitler, it was Mussolini.
Is my chat frozen?
I don't know.
Let me see.
Yeah. That thing about Hitler reminds me of that story where, if I recall correctly, Hitler almost drowned as a child, but he was saved by a man, and that man actually survived World War II, and people, and I think he was interviewed, and they asked him, knowing what you know now, would you have saved Hitler? And he said, yeah, I'd still save him, and they asked why. Because he wasn't an evil racist dictator at the time, he was just a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's kill baby Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Same vibes.
I know there was like a science. I know there was like
a. They even find out it was him.
I know there was like a science fiction book. I haven't read it, but I saw like a synopsis for it where they try to go back and assassinate Hitler, and and they keep failing, and it makes Hitler's life worse and worse, especially his childhood. And finally, out of guilt, one of the members confesses to Hitler, and Hitler basically says, you guys ruined my life because of something I haven't done yet. I hate you, and I'll never forgive you. And unfortunately, the would-be assassins were Jewish, and they ended up creating the anti-Semitism that Hitler would become. But in the end, we have to realize, people, you can't travel back in time to stop Hitler, because if you do that and the Holocaust never happens, well, then there's no incentive for you to want to go back and kill Hitler.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that moment in Futurama where Professor Farnsworth takes Hitler. No consequences from that.
Yeah.
Or actually, what you do is you'd go back and you'd kill Hitler. You'd come, back to the present, and nothing would change, because all you do is create a separate timeline where there was no Hitler in World War II. But that's not your timeline.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, that's how the Marvel comic universe works. If you go back and travel back in time, you don't actually fix anything from your timeline. You just create a new separate timeline that goes on to do its own thing. Because I think there was an X-Men comic that explained that, where I don't know if it was Cable or someone comes back in time to stop something, and he successfully stopped something, therefore preventing, the thing that he went back to stop from happening. But when he goes back, nothing changed, and he learns that, well, yeah, you didn't save anyone. All you did was create another timeline, but in this timeline, the person you were trying to save, they're still gone, and the event still happens. So, honestly, I think we shouldn't bother with time travel, because not only is it pretty much impossible, even if it was, you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, you don't want Pandora's box.
Yeah, you do not want to mess with that.
Yeah. Also, if we had time travel, the entire concept of investing would just become a non.
Yeah.
Yeah.
thing because
Everyone would go back in
you could-
time and buy AT&T at 25 cents.
Yeah.
or either,
buy Amazon
Yeah.
or
If I- if I-
Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, there was one physicist that said that the reason why time travel is impossible, because if it was possible, we would have known about it we would have known how to do it for a very, very long time, because people would be going back in time all the time.
Well, there's a theory that you can't go back in time any further than the moment you first activate the time machine.
Well, I think the as Stephen Hawking or someone else said it, the greatest evidence time travel will never be possible is that we're not being bombarded by hordes of tourists from the future.
Yeah.
But I mean,
From
that
the past.
that would be the way you'd know, because as soon as you turned on the time machine, a guy would pop out and say, "Hi, I'm a historian from the future," because historians are going to want to go back absolutely as far as they can. So that would be be the first person out of the time machine.
I mean, yeah, if time travel was possible, we wouldn't be having these historical debates of what would really happen, because people would say, okay, let's just go back in time and very carefully observe it. Oh, that's how it happened. Okay. But no, we're still debating history, because there's still a lot of debates going on about historical facts and what's really going on.
I haven't seen the fundamentalist Catholic movement. There are fundies around, but I haven't seen Catholics specifically.
What about like traveling into the future? Like I mean, obviously there's the.
Well, I mean,
idea of
that's easy.
freezing
You just
yourself.
get going, to a significant fraction of the speed of light, and you can, travel, 1,000 years in an afternoon.
Mhm.
There's no going back, but
Yeah, there was an episode of that. There was an episode of that on an old Nickelodeon TV show called My Life as a Teenage Robot, where the main character's friend Sheldon accidentally gets stowed away aboard a space travel, and then 10 minutes later he comes back, but he's an old man. It's like, but you were only a teenager, a few minutes ago. What happened? Don't you idiots know anything? I spent so much time on that ship traveling faster than the speed of light. Time slows down for you.
Is faster than light travel anywhere near possible?
not according to anything we know about, because even though it's theoretically possible for like elementary particles to do it for brief periods of time, or for, there to be an entanglement that it sort of happens with, you can't get information to travel faster than light. And that's the important part.
Yeah.
On a completely unrelated note, people seem to really despise landlords.
Yeah, that seems to be growing.
Oh, speaking of the furry drama,
Do these people just think that without landlords, we'd all have free places to live or something?
Are they as hated as its CEOs are?
I was about to say, speaking of that furry controversy I was talking about earlier, that's actually one thing that, he was caught doing and he was called out for, that people were saying was that, oh, he took advantage of a friend because when his friend who he was staying at with his wife asked for rent, he threw a fit and all that. And I was just thinking, a lot of furries in the furry fandom, they're socialist SJWs. I thought they're supposed to hate rent.
They only hate it when they have to pay rent.
Yep. You know what I want to do just to prove the hypocrisy of these people? I want to find out where a lot of these people are living, and when they leave their house, I'm gonna squat in their area. And when they say, "Hey, you can't live here, I live here," I'll be like, "Squatters' rights." Yeah, I don't know where that came from. You know, this idea that if no one's using a particular piece of land, even if they own it, that means it's up for grabs. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way, people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the cruel irony with a lot of these squatters is that the landowners were actually paying. Like, I remember there was that one Chinese American couple that were building their dream home, and yes, they were planning to rent it, but that was only as a temporary setback until they could get the capital to actually buy it and move into it. But then a squatter came in and they can't legally evict him, but they still have to pay everything for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, they're only going after that guy because he's not politically affiliated with them, so therefore he's an enemy that must be stopped.
Kevin Mitnick passed away 11 days ago.
Oh, didn't he? I missed that.
Yeah.
Who did?
He was
Kevin
a
Mitnick.
hacker. He literally wrote the book on I'm drawing the blank on it. Social engineering, yeah, where you hack people instead of systems.
He was only 59.
Well, what did he die of?
I think prostate cancer.
Yeah.
Sinead O'Connor
No
died.
one.
Sinead O'Connor died too. Yeah, I know someone on a Discord group mentioned that, and I said, I mean, condolences to her friends and family, but I don't think the music industry lost anyone significant.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry, but she is so hilarious. It's like, oh, I hate Christianity because it's anti-woman, it's pro-patriarchal, it espouses child abuse, so I'm gonna convert to Islam.
Yeah, because that's so much better.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was pancreatic cancer.
It's like, and I tried to explain this to people. It's like saying, yeah, I hate Nazism because it's anti-Semitic and it advocates killing people. So I'm gonna become a Stalinist now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's always laughable whenever a lot of socialists say, if you're anti-communist, that means you're pro-fascist. Like, they're the same, pretty much.
You don't even. Every time someone says fascism, I'm just gonna say, you don't even know what that means. Stop calling me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people who say, oh, I'm against, racism and genocide and everything, and they're wearing a Shea shirt.
A Che Guevara shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think these people are in love with the idea of something and not what it actually represents.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they like the aesthetics of Marxism. And that's a deal with a lot of like Twitter tankies.
Yeah. You people are probably the same type of people that sent the Night Stalkers letters asking them to marry him. No joke, that actually happened. Richard Ramirez, one of the most evil serial killers in American history, when he was in prison, he got love letters from women. Despite the fact that he was...
That's typical. They all get that.
Yeah, despite the fact that he was a violent offender who raped and murdered women.
Or like the people who say, I'm anti-U.S. imperialism while LARPing the Soviet Union, which was an incredibly imperialist state. What did they do in Afghanistan? Also, I guess all the pro-communist Warsaw Pact governments got there all by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in any other circumstance, there's no way, because Poland is a very anti-communist, traditionally anti-communist country. There's no way a communist government would be organically come into power there.
You know that whole thing about Richard Ramirez? I think I saw a parody of that one time where a woman who has like a masochistic streak, you know, she actually marries Richard. She wants to marry Richard Ramirez, so she meets him during a conjugal visit, and she's like, "Yeah, do whatever you want to me, you evil psychopath." And Richard Ramirez is about to do something. He's like, "I don't know. You want this to happen. That kind of defeats the fun in it." I mean, seriously, that's how people like that operate. You know, they don't want you to voluntarily be into that stuff because that's the whole point why they do it.
Yeah.
That's why the whole "we just gotta teach men not to rape" won't work, because that's not why people commit those acts. They don't do it to fulfill sexual pleasure. They do it because they get a power trip out of it. That's why they do it. I mean, come on, even Family Guy made fun of that in an older episode, you know, where there's like a police show where they catch the criminal and the good cop's like, "Why are you doing this? Are you blaming society, or is this just a cry for help?" And he's like, "Dude, I just wanted the woman's money. That's why I robbed her."
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted the money and I didn't want to work for it, so I robbed her. Although it is kind of funny
that was in the cartoon version of the Tick. You know, he captures the bad guys and he was like, "What's the idea?" And they said, "Well, we thought we'd steal a whole bunch of money and then we wouldn't have to work anymore."
Yeah.
No big grandiose plans, just get money and not have to work.
The funny irony is that it is true when they say crime doesn't pay, because one thing that gets overlooked, and I've heard this from actual ex-criminals that people fail to realize, it's like, yeah, you'll steal like all this money from the bank, but then you realize something, you can't do much with that money.
You can, but you're not going to be like living lavishly on the lifestyle. You have to spend like subtly bit by bit and not really live richly.
That's the reason why most drug dealers and bank robbers, even though they have a lot of money, they're still living in like trailer parks and in dilapidated, you know, apartments, because even if you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, from your stuff, you know, what you can do with it is limited. Because if you walk into a bank, you know, to get a loan for a house and say, "I got $10,000, they're going to ask, "What do you do for a living to make all that money?"
Yeah, they'll actually like become legitimate, you know, business owners, you know, something that puts in cash. And like if they make, you know, like, you know, $20,000, you know, in their business, they'll stick another couple thousand, just fake, you know, a few receipts, but not enough to really, you know, make it look like, oh, you're clearly not getting that much business. You know.
Yeah.
I've been having a ton of fun going through my spam folder and responding to email scammers.
Yeah.
When they realize you've been screwing with them the whole time, they get really pissed.
I think I saw a funny parody that made fun of, you know, how a lot of, you know, these like drug dealers and bootleggers, they were arrested, but not for all the crimes they committed, but for tax evasion. And the thing is, we finally caught this drug dealer, and we're going to sentence him to a long time in prison to make a message very clear. If you're going to run an illicit activity and profit off of violence, murder, and drug trafficking, you better pay the IRS some of that moolah you think you get.
Yeah, that was the only thing I think Al Capone ever got
that's all they could get him for. That's all they could get him for was tax evasion.
That's a question I've been having about Hunter Biden. If he had paid his taxes, would he have gotten away with it?
Government's priorities in a nutshell.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that's the reason why the IRS was looking into all this, because he wasn't paying the taxes on it.
Yep.
If he had just paid the taxes and they'd, "Hey, Daniel, how you doing?"
Been a long time. How's everyone?
But if he had actually just paid his taxes on everything, they wouldn't have had any reason to look into it. And
I mean, come on, Hunter Biden. Haven't you seen Batman the Animated Series? Even the Joker doesn't dare mess with the IRS. Though, when you think about it, I know why the Joker wouldn't want to mess with the IRS. Because, see, the reason why he's okay with committing crimes with Batman is because if Batman grabs him, he just goes to Arkham Asylum. He spends a few years there plotting his next scheme. Then he breaks out. The game starts all over again. If the IRS catches him, he's going to the big boy prison where he's not going to have that luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Years. Arkham Asylum has revolving doors, you know.
Yeah.
It is way too easy to escape from that place.
Yeah. But you still get the joke. The joke is that if he's captured by the IRS, he's not going to Arkham. He's going to High Max prison, and something tells me he's going to have a lot harder time breaking out of that.
I mean, but it's not just the Joker. You know, Harvey Dent. Everyone, you know, escapes from
Yeah.
Arkham.
The writers will find a way.
They actually made that kind of a plot in one of the comic books because where it's later revealed that the reason why a lot of these you know criminals keep escaping Arkham Asylum is because the director of it is a mad doctor, and he deliberately lets them escape because he uses them as scientific experiments. He wants to see what happens if we let him out. I don't think putting Joker in the Phantom Zone is going to work because I mean seriously, people have escaped from the Phantom Zone before. That you can escape from that.
What do you guys think about James Gunn rebooting the DC cinematic universe?
Anyone with a decent memory knows where I stand on reboots in general.
Also, the DCEU is beyond saving.
Also, Daniel with Disney on the verge of collapse, maybe Star Wars will finally be saved, and Legends will once again become the true expanded universe.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I am sorry, but even though I am a Star Wars fan, the Disney films kind of ruined Star Wars for me, and I, honest to God, cannot even watch the original trilogy. Because I have to live with that in the back of my mind, saying all these great characters are not going to end up that way they did.
Let's just face it, people. The original trilogy was not that great. Empire was a good movie, but I mean, I think everyone is remembering Star Wars as kids when they were mesmerized by it. But I mean, look back on those movies objectively. Empire had some really good stuff in it. Yeah, the rest was just subpar movie making.
I actually came through it through supplemental material in my teens.
I mean, I don't know. I sort of disagree. I mean,
I still enjoy them. I mean,
yeah, I watched them.
I mean, the thing with Star Wars is yeah, you know, they're flawed. There's some flaws in the Star Wars trilogy and all that, but you know what? You know, the thing is though, you can still see passion behind it. You know.
Yeah.
That's why I argue the prequels aren't as bad as people think they are. They're definitely inferior to the original trilogy, but there's still that heart behind it. You know, there's still fun and passion for it. You know, the Disney films, there's none of that.
I mean, the Revenge of the Sith, especially, I would say, is a legitimate good movie that's a worthy predecessor to the original trilogy. It might not be as good, but
everyone loves to hate on Hayden Christensen, but from what I've seen, because I've seen other movies in, he's honestly a legitimately good actor. You know what I mean? People make fun of him. People make fun of him, you know, for the sand scene, you know, from Attack of the Clones. But let's be real here, people. Even Morgan Freeman couldn't make that line work.
Yeah.
Though to be fair, I heard actually a pretty you know understandable and actually made sense, you know, defense for that scene. Like a lot of people like, I hate that scene where Anakin's like, I hate sand because, you know, it's stupid and awkward and all that. But think about the context. He's with Padme, a woman he has a super crush on. Let's be real here. You know, a lot of us, when we were that age and we got in touch with our crush, what did we do? Did we pull on the moves? Did we talk suave and savvy? No, we were like, hi, how's the weather? How's the weather?
Sorry, but that scene was just coarse and rough and irritating.
Yeah, it wasn't at all like you're making it out to be.
Yeah.
And SKM, I think that's what he's doing, rebuilding it just from scratch.
I'm sorry. I had to do that joke.
Though I will say the special editions and the unnecessary CG that was added later did it no favors, and it sucks that it's mainly the only way to view it nowadays.
shot first. Dang it.
To be
Yes.
fair, I will say
Yes.
to be fair, I will say this. I do kind of prefer the special edition of A New Hope over the original, because the original, I mean, I will agree with Sharon that the original, New Hope, it's still a pretty good movie, but a lot of the effects in it do not hold up.
Yeah. Well, there were some legitimately good changes.
Well,
from the
I
special
don't think
editions,
the
but for most
effects
part-
needed to be redone with CGI. I think they really just needed to be recomposited.
I mainly liked some of the bits of continuity they added in the special editions. Mainly,
Well, some
The
of
Emperor.
the deleted scenes being put back in help things make more sense.
and the
Also, the Emperor.
I really like the Outrider cameo.
Like, and they put for the scene where he's Darth Vader's doing a hologram conference with the Emperor. They actually had crap, Ian McDermott was actually had him rather than what was in the original, which is
Fun
I forgot
fun fact about Ian McDermott: he played the Emperor in the original trilogy and the new trilogy. That actually opened my eyes. I'm like, really? It's like, yep. The only difference is that they didn't have to put. The only difference is that when he reprised his role as the Emperor for the prequel trilogy, he didn't have to put on much makeup. Because he was actually in his 30s. He was actually like in his 20s when they are like maybe like out, and the reason why he looked like an old man was because they had to put a lot of makeup on him. Fun fact,
But I'm
also
just going to say it. Anyone who thinks George Lucas can do no wrong should watch the Star Wars Holiday Special.
I mean, to be fair, no Star Wars fan is gonna there's very few diehards that are like, oh, George Lucas is perfect and he can do no wrong. You rarely see those in Star Wars. Generally speaking, most people recognize that George Lucas is one of those cases where he's kind of he's a very flawed director, but he has heart,
Yeah,
Kinda
but
like Ed
it
Wood.
always
Kinda
worked.
like-
It always worked better when he turned either the writing or the directing over to someone else.
like you can
Kinda like-
see. You
kinda
can see it in all the flaws of the Phantom Menace. Like he
Yeah.
surrounded himself with like yes men for that one, and that did not.
going
not
to what I described George Lucas, in a way, I mean, I know it's a weird comparison, but it's kind of like Ed Wood, That's the reason why Ed Wood films are so liked, even though they're god awful movies. It's because Ed Wood, yeah, he was a terrible director, but he had heart and passion, and you can see that in a lot of the films he made.
Oh, that's why you make such great bad movies, because they're bad
Yeah.
movies. But yeah, you can.
Yeah,
Especially when it's really
Glenn
personal
Knight
to
from
him,
Outer
like Glenn
Space.
or Glenda. That
Yeah.
was a very personal story for him.
Yeah, Except the final films he made in the career, because the final films he made in the last 8 years of his life were just exploitative porn films. But
Yeah, because he was just trying to get money.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I did hear that. Unfortunately, near the end of his life, he did go into financial hardships, and that's why he made that stuff. Because unfortunately, at the time, cheap exploitative porn films were the fad. So,
Well, the thing about it is, as bad as his films were, like Plan 9 and all of those, they made money. He just never saw any of it.
yeah.
They were raking it in, but he never really got, because the producers would take it all.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Fun fact, like so many people are saying, "Oh, how can The Last Jedi be a box office bomb when it made all this money at the box office?" Because like, yeah, it made $1 billion, but people fail to realize a lot of that money does not go to the production and all that.
Oh, they do so much funky accounting in Hollywood. They'll be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, it raked all this in, but if you look at net instead of gross, it didn't really make anything, and so we can't pay the director and the actors all their residuals and everything. Sorry,
Yeah.
it just didn't make enough."
Yeah,
And it's
fun fact.
bullshit, and everyone knows it.
Yeah, fun fact, and there was a Mel Brooks movie based off of this. Sometimes, in some circumstances, you actually want your movie to bomb.
Yeah, make more money with a flop than with a hit.
Yeah.
Like that Mel Brooks was like
Yeah, that's
The
what I was saying.
producers,
Yeah,
yeah,
thing.
the producers,
that's what I was saying. Yeah, they're bankrupted to they owe so much money to their creditors, but they can't get their way out of it. So they come up with an interesting idea. Hey, let's make the worst play ever that is so awful it bombs badly, and then we declare bankruptcy so we can keep the money, but we don't have to give the money to the creditors. But the problem is the play is so bad that people actually enjoy it.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's a funny
Because they thought it was a parody.
yeah. Yeah, they try to.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah. And then there's that, because I haven't seen the film, but I have seen some scenes, and like there's that famous scene, where they're sitting there when it happens because their creditors are coming for them, and they're like, "How did we succeed so well?
It's like we had the wrong play, the wrong cast, the wrong producer. Where did we go right?"
Yeah. Fun fact, apparently, that's actually the reason why Uwe Boll is so hated in the film industry, even though there's other bad directors like him, and he's not the worst director, but it's kind of because you can kind of tell, he's kind of an egotistical guy, and it's pretty clear you can tell he's making these bad films to take advantage of like I said, those tax
Who are you
write-offs.
talking about?
Uwe Boll. He's infamous for making really terrible video game adaptation films.
Yeah,
Uwe Boll.
He's a German film director. He also used to have like a hilarious letterbox.
It's just it's not coming through. You're not saying it clearly.
That's Uwe. Uniform Victor Echo.
Okay.
And Boll.
Oh,
Bravo Oscar Lima.
Oh yeah. Boll used to do that all the
put
time.
it in the chat.
Yeah, Boll used to do that all the time, if I recall correctly. He was like, if you hate my films, I'm gonna challenge you to a boxing match, and if I win, you have to admit my film is good. And he did that, and the critics said, yeah, you won the boxing match, but your movie still sucks. Yeah, I'm sorry. As the old saying goes, you can't polish a turd. Yeah.
Well, no, you can polish a turd, but it's still a turd.
Yeah.
That's the expression.
Oh, yeah.
Polishing a turd.
No.
It doesn't change its nature as a turd.
Yep. It's still a piece of poop.
I mean, it's like Ridley Scott when he has good material, like Alien or, Blade Runner or whatever. He can do it great. When he's given something horrible like Prometheus, he can make it look good. He can make it look astounding, but he can't actually make it a good movie.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's another reason why I don't like the new Star Wars films, because like a lot of people are saying, well, George Lucas isn't really that good of a director, and he's only good when he's good as the storyboard guy, the guy that's telling the story and the lore and giving it to the writers, but he's terrible as a director. And I'm like, okay, fine, but let's be real here. The directors they picked for the Disney movies, they're not any better. They're not really any better. I mean, J.J. Abrams is meh. His movies are very hit or miss. Rian Johnson, from what I've researched, he's not a good writer. He was a horrible director, and especially the way he treated the cast. There's no joke. The way he treated the original cast, he was not a nice guy. Mark Hamill was very vocal about Rian Johnson. Because people were, when the film came out, he was criticized. He was criticized, for what happened to Luke, and he more or less was saying, listen, that's not what I envisioned Luke Skywalker doing. And I kept telling Rian Johnson, I think Luke should do this or that or this or that. And Rian Johnson just kept saying, yeah, Mark, go back to your trailer and I'll call you when I need you. So I don't blame Mark Hamill for how Luke Skywalker ended up being portrayed in the new trilogy, because at the end of the day, it's just bad writing. It's like, what are you supposed to do as an actor,
Honestly, Hamill expected him to turn out like he did in New Jedi Order, so.
Yeah. Like I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I mean, I kind of feel bad for some of those actors. You know, it's like these are some of the worst lines, you know, or scenes ever, and you're just like, man, I feel bad for them. Because at the end of the day, it is true what they say. It's like, it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. If a scene or a line of dialogue is so poorly written, no one's going to fix it. Yeah, nothing you can say or do is going to fix it.
You gotta have the humility, man. I've put it in my scripts. It's like, this dialogue is horrible. Someone please write something better. Because
Yeah.
I can tell when my dialogue is bad. I can't always fix it.
Yeah.
But I can tell when it's bad.
Speaking of actor-director relationships, you know Klaus Kinski? You've heard of him?
Oh yeah. I know Klaus Kinski.
He was infamous for being difficult to work with. Well, during one filming of a movie, the director actually figured out a way how to play with Klaus Kinski's stubbornness, you know, to their advantage. If there was a scene in the movie they were making that they really wanted to keep, but they were afraid he wouldn't do it, they would flat out say, "Hey, you know this scene in the film? We think it's not necessary. We're going to cut it out." And just for the sake of being a contrarian, he would be like, "Nine, I got to do that scene. I want to do it. Do it." And then when there was a scene they wanted out of the film, they would say, "Hey, you know this scene? I think it'd be really good, and we should add it to the film." And he'd be like, "Nine, I won't do it. I won't do it." And it's like, okay, we can't fight with you. Fun fact, in that same movie, he was such a pain in the butt that one of the Italian co-directors said, "Do you want me to kill him?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're just kidding, right?" "No, I know people. I know people in the Italian mafia. If you want him gone, I can make him go."
Kate Winslet, Leo DiCaprio, and Titanic. Was that hostility with each other or with James Cameron? Because let's face it, it's not their fault, but they were the weakest things about that movie. Everything else about that movie was fantastic, but their story and dialogue just was not great.
Yeah, like I've heard a lot of people say, you know, Titanic would have been a good movie if they just got rid of, you know, the love story and all that.
Okay, I have one big problem. Whenever it cuts back to the old woman telling the story, she's wearing different earrings.
I think they're trying to say that like it's like taking place over time or something. Because she's telling the story like as they're, you know, sending their rovers down to.
Speaking of the Titanic, the Titan's making headlines a lot. Like,
yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, it's clear that the company that made it did some really bad stuff, but like people are like going like overboard. Like they're saying, "Oh, see, this proves that, you know, that private companies don't care about safety and, you know, it's bad and all that." It's like, people, it was a tourism, it was just people, whenever you're just going to learn to accept that shit happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't even following the standards that other private subs had done.
And like so many people are saying, this proves that, private companies can't be trusted with exploration because they'll take shortcuts for the sake of profit and money saving. It's like, do you guys remember the Challenger shuttle?
Yeah.
That was 100% funded by the government through taxpayers' dollars with no profit incentive anyway. And they still took unnecessary cheap shortcuts.
Well, and they tried to blame, I forget what the company was, but there was an engineering company that,
they tried to blame the company. Yeah,
the company released all of it saying that all of their like 15, however many engineers to the man said, "Do not launch when it's cold. Delay the launch. You will get O-ring failure." Yeah. And NASA went ahead with the launch. NASA just ignored them, and then they try blaming them for it. But
I mean, a similar thing happened with the Columbia,
Yeah.
And actually, the Columbia was even more tragic because because contrary to popular belief, they could have been saved. You know, they easily could have turned the ship around. You know, even when it was launched. You know.
Yeah, they could have aborted and.
Yeah, they could have aborted. They could have aborted. You know, they could have aborted the mission, or at the very least bailed out. You know, because they had that ability, but they didn't.
Titanic did have a sister ship. I forget what it was called, and I'm not sure what happened there. But
Two of them, I think they
launched together.
Yeah, but there was like the Olympia and the Carpathia, I think. Oh, we'll have to look it up.
I remember it was White Star Lines.
Yep, the Olympia and the Olympic and the Carpathia.
But there was one that was virtually there was the same design as the Titanic that I think launched on the same day or same week or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the Britannic.
Yeah, the Britannic sank in World War One. I got a moth in here.
No, that was the Lusitania.
Oh, I mean Lusitania too, but I think the Britannic also sank.
No, the Britannic didn't sink.
It didn't.
Let's
see.
Oh no, wait, they did. Yeah, I was. Oh, sorry, I misread. It said. I was about to say, because I was looking it up, and it said they had a career from 1911 to 1934. So I'm like, how could it couldn't have sank during World War I if it lasted that long? Then I'm like, oh wait, that's the Olympic, not the Britannic.
Yeah, it must have been the Britannic.
Yeah. Yeah, Germany gets a lot of hatred for its submarines and mines, but you know, here's something that I still have yet to see the British government acknowledge. Maybe Germany wouldn't have did that if you didn't blockade Germany from the rest of the world.
Yep.
Like I remember reading somewhere there was actually a compromise by some American businessman that tried to negotiate with the British Empire, saying, "Here's the deal. You know, can you at least let us, train non-military goods with Germany? Like there'll be non-military." And the British military was like, "Nope, nothing gets to Germany. Nothing gets to Germany until they surrender to us." And of course, that led to mass starvation, and there was desperation to lift that blockade. And the German army had no choice but to say, "Well, we can't trade with the rest of the world, so we got to cut off trade from the United Kingdom. If they want to play that game, we can play that game." Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, but the British blockade, it did far more damage caused far more suffering and damage than anything that the unrestricted U-boat stuff did.
Yeah, the Olympic was the sister ship to the Titanic.
Honestly, Schism, if the U.S. joined the Central Powers, Britain would have been screwed because they would have lost trade with the United States, and the United States could do things like invade Canada, which would knock Canada out of the war, which was believe it or not a lot of people realize this, Canada was a very important member of the Allied forces, and they could have attacked Australia because all the Australians and Canadians were in Europe and Africa fighting a war. So yeah, England would have been screwed. Yeah, they would have been, I'm no historian. We don't know what would have happened because it's chaotic, but a pretty good likely chance if the US joined the Central Powers is we would have seen a Central Powers victory because England would be forced to withdraw from the war to fight the Americans, so France would have to fight Germany on their own, and without British support, they probably would have ended up either losing or coming to some sort of ceasefire.
Well, both sides were already kind of seeking out some kind of ceasefire or end of the war or something when America came in, and all America did was ended decisively for.
Oh yeah.
That's all that happened.
Yeah, it's just like honestly, as a historian, as a guy who likes to read history as a hobby, it's like, do you know how many modern day political and social problems would never have happened, never would have even been being discussed if World War I never happened?
Yep.
Like World War II, or no, not modern, but I guess.
Well, not just World War II, like, because a lot of modern day conflicts, conflicts and, political animosities are traced back to World War I, because after World War I, a lot of the Central Powers, people fail to realize the Central Powers weren't these backwater, nations in the Middle East. They were superpowers at the time, and when the Allies won, they began dividing, territories that had previously belonged to Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire, and they began dividing them up and giving them to their allies, that helped them against the Central Powers, which led to, a lot of the conflicts we have today. Because there's a lot of territories that are controlled by groups of people who historically had never even lived there, but they own it now, even though there was already an ethnic minority. They were saying, hey, but we were here first. Why do you guys get to rule? Oh, because the British said we could. Yeah, the British, they did a lot of fucked up stuff during both World War I and post World War I.
Well, and also, if you don't have World War I, you don't have a Great Depression. You don't have all of those horrible, Supreme Court decisions that I made several quickies about.
You don't have the Soviet Union, which caused the Cold War, which made America to go from a stay out of other nations' affairs to we got to be the world police.
Yeah. Well, that might have started at World War II as well. Or hell, World War II might have been that start.
The only reason we don't have more terrorism is because of the CIA and the MI6.
They're probably the reason why we have as much terrorism as we do.
Yeah. Like, I was having this conversation, with people about, about some of the weapons that were coming up for the United States, and I was doing this on a Ryan Macbeth video one time, and I was and I brought up a question, and I get to hear an answer from, and I wanted to ask them. It's like, okay, what's the point of developing a really good weapon? Like, let's say, for the sake of the argument, it is a generally good weapon. It is a generally good weapon system. What's the point if it bankrupts the nation it's supposed to be protecting?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
On the topic of sorry.
I was about to say this too. That's actually the reason why, because there's also been a discussion, about weapons treaties and updating the Geneva Convention, and I'm just thinking, listen, the Geneva Convention is a joke. It's always been a joke, people. And the sad reality is that, listen, I understand why certain weapons like cluster bombs and landmines are hated, and rightfully so, but the sad reality is that when you really think about it, a lot of these treaties saying you can't use them, they're basically just powerful, rich nations basically telling poor nations, you can't defend yourself, you have to use these fancy weapons. It's like, but we can't afford those fancy weapons to protect us from our enemies. Well, tough shit. If you use them,
no, that's okay. We'll sell them to you.
Yeah.
Or it'll be an excuse to go after a foreign country for doing to their people exactly what our own government did in Waco.
But I've asked, because like I said, I get into this argument about the F-35 fighter all the time, because people are saying it's actually a really good fighter, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that it's a good fighter. It can be the best stealth fighter plane in the whole wide world, but you guys aren't answering the problem. What justifies the cost? How is this going to make America safer? Because that's just the thing, people. The F-35 is not a weapon of defense. It's a weapon designed to fly into an enemy nation and drop a bomb undetected, so it can't be avoided. And it's pretty funny, because one person was talking about, the F-35, and they're like, quite frankly, this plane kind of scares me a little bit. And I'm like, well, yeah, how do you think nations like North Korea feel about that kind of thing? The reason why some of these nations are resorting to terrorism is because from their point of view, that's the only way they can practically fight back against the United States. They're not stupid. They know that they can't go toe-to-toe with the U.S. military, so they gotta hit them where it hurts, and that's hit them politically. That's one lesson, that's one lesson that I'm surprised nobody's ever learned from Star Wars yet, is that you can't use fear to enforce world peace. You can't make a weapon, that it's so devastating and efficient that people are going to be too scared to fight you. It never works like that way. Literally everything people say about these new weapons and how it'll scare enemies into not wanting to fight, that is literally what they said about the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it'll scare the Japanese into surrendering, and not to mention it'll keep the Soviet Union at bay and all that. What's this? The Soviet Unions have an atomic bomb now? Well, we just need more of them then. What's this? We have so many weapons that if we do go to war with the Soviet Union, we'll destroy the world in the process? Well, shit. Yeah. Of course, there were some generals that were like, fuck the world. Fuck the world. As long as we win, who cares? I think I saw a joke like that one time where it's like, congratulations, General, you destroyed all of civilization, but we killed those goddamn commies. But we destroyed the world in nuclear hellfire. But we won! But we won!
This reminds me of an episode of Red Dwarf.
Yeah. You're thinking about the ones with the planet full of androids?
Yes.
That was a good one.
I haven't seen Red Dwarf.
Oh, it's great.
I do know you mentioned that there was one funny episode where there's a guy with a military career and he has all these medals, and they're like, wow, you have all these medals, you must have been a war hero. Yep, and it turns out the medals he got wasn't because he was a war hero, it's because he stayed in the military for so long. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you stayed in the army for X amount of years, here's your veteran's reward. But you didn't actually fight anywhere. Yeah, but you were dedicated.
It was like 6 years long service, 8 years long service, 10 years long service, 12 years long service. And he had initials by his name. They were BSC and SSC, and that was bronze swimming certificate and silver swimming certificate.
Yeah, which is true because there are a ridiculous amount of rewards that the military has in the U.S. military, which has nothing to do with. Which has nothing to do with like actual military service. They're things like, oh, he did good. Oh, he did good at the firearms score, or he got the number one rank and all that. That's fine, but
What are some of your favorite Linux distros, Shane?
The only one I've really been using, aside from just pure Debian for servers, is the Linux Mint Debian edition, where you kind of avoid that round trip through Ubuntu.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, when the Empire thought, it's like, oh, this Death Star, will scare all nations. All we have to do is blow up one planet, then nobody will dare challenge the Empire again. What's this? We blew up Alderaan, and now everyone's joining the Rebel Alliance?
Yeah.
Why?
Also, we made a ship-sized access port to easily accessible to
honestly, that's the biggest thing I absolutely hate about the Disneyverse is that basically in the Disneyverse, and it's explained in the comics, basically once the First Order destroyed the New Republic capital, basically the attitude of the galaxy was, well, I guess that means we got to obey the First Order now. They won. And I'm just thinking that's not how it works, and that's one thing I love about the original Star Wars expanded universe in the comics, is that it actually kind of boils down to the practical politics that go into war, Like, if I recall correctly, one of the things that the New Republic had to deal with after they defeated the Empire was, it's like, yeah, a lot of people didn't like the Empire, but they weren't big fans of the Old Republic either, so they had to reform themselves and figure out, okay, how can we set up the Old Republic Republic without making the mistakes of the Old Republic?
And even it took a good number of years to take Coruscant back after the Battle of Endor as well. So.
Oh yeah, the Empire held on to Endor for like up until like the final years of the Galactic Civil War.
Held on to Coruscant, you mean?
Yeah, held on to Coruscant. Yeah, that's another thing that not a lot of Star Wars fans realize. Because like so many people are like, wait a minute, why did the Empire stop fighting after they blew up the second Death Star? They still had a technical numerical value. Guess what? They did. Once the Imperial forces recovered from the shock of losing the second Death Star, the Emperor, they started relaunching their campaign. But obviously, because the bureaucracy was gone, and what really killed them wasn't the Rebel Alliance; it was the infighting.
Yeah, a lot of it kind of devolved into infighting between various warlords.
Yeah, it was basically okay, we still have the numerical superiority, we still control the political support, we can still defeat the Rebel Alliance, and then it became, okay, who's going to lead the Empire now? I'm going to lead the Empire. No, I'm going to lead the Empire. I'm going to lead the Empire. And then they started killing, assassinating, and staging coups against each other, and really the Rebel Alliance didn't have to do much after that. Yeah. Except grab the popcorn and watch the Imperial Remnant destroy itself. But no, the Disneyverse is just like we gotta rally to destroy the First Order. Nope, they blew up the Republic. They won. What? That doesn't piss you off? Well, I hate it, but they won, so we have to do what they say. Like, I brought this up to people. It's like, in real life, you can't take over a kingdom by killing the king. If you walk up to the king and you assassinate him, his guards are not going to bow down saying, oh, the old king is dead, this assassin's the king. No, they're going to kill you.
Unless you play Stronghold Crusader.
What?
It's an old RTS game, kind of similar to Age of Empires.
I mean, that's just how, that's one thing that Star Wars got right, is that it demonstrated that you can't win a war by killing the king, It just doesn't work that way.
But you can insurrect America by seizing the podium.
Yeah.
So I'm led to believe by the news media.
Yeah. I still laugh.
That was just the funny thing, though, about the War of 1812, because, I mean, yeah, America was trying their best to protect the original documents of the Constitution and the Declaration and all that, but that was just for historical purposes. But Britain was actually acting like, oh, if we just blow up these documents, then America won't have a government anymore and we can rule again. Yeah. And it's like, why did you think that?
I mean, in all honesty, I think that's the reason why many people consider, the War of 1812 to be an American victory, even though the treaty-wise it ended with a pre-war antebellum with neither side, is because basically it debunked everything about modern war. Because, like I said, the British went into that war saying it'll just be like a European war. All we got to do is storm the capital, burn it to the ground, and the people will be so demoralized they'll never want to fight again. And that didn't happen.
Anything they'd be energized.
Partially because a tornado destroyed the British forces at Washington, D.C.
The U.S. probably said. The U.S. probably thought the same thing whenever it overthrew someone.
Yeah.
Where do you normally get your news, Shane?
As many different sources as I can, and I try to get independent corroboration. I've
been watching a lot of TIK history lately. He's pretty good, especially debunking nonsense about World War II. And someone's doing something right, because I've been taught, because I like posting his videos and all that, and people hate him because it's like he's not using actual historical sources. Yeah, he's citing them, he's linking them. Oh, but they're not respected sources. that's so funny. That's so funny, with how history views Hitler. It's like Hitler wasn't this because he did this, but this is his own words. This is what he said, what his opinion, which clearly shows he supports, a political ideology that, in all honesty, you kind of support. Well, Hitler was a madman, so we can't take his words seriously. That's another fallacy.
I've been relying more and more on LawTube because, I mean, the LawTubers, you got people all over the place. You've got, Nate the lawyer on the left and Nick Rekieta on the right and things like that. But they're at least good. You get a diverse point of view, but they're all good about explaining the law behind it and how all of that works. And it really makes it so that if you watch, CNN or someone like that, and they're talking about this stuff, it just makes it clear that these people are completely clueless when it comes to the law, or when they do have a lawyer on to talk some of these, like, yeah, that lawyer's lying through his eye teeth. He knows that's not the way it works.
That's actually why I actually enjoy watching a new YouTuber that's on called Ryan Macbeth, because even though I don't agree with all his views, is because he's a pretty reliable go-to person when you're hearing all the stuff about military news, and because he actually served in the military for like a couple decades, and he knows the ins and outs of it, and he says this is actually what's really going on,
Yeah.
So when the news network says, so and so nation is using this kind of weapon, how horrible it is, it's like, actually that's not what they're using. Like
I think he made
like a good
about cluster ammunitions.
Oh yeah, because during the Russo-Ukraine war, there was accusations that the Ukrainians were using cluster bombs, when he pointed out, well, yes, the weapons were made from cluster bombs. They're not using the cluster bombs themselves. They're using the individual bomblets as bombs. Because the individual bomblets on their own are just standard explosive. They don't become a problem when you put a whole bunch of them in a canister. And when they're bopping around, while being transported, they malfunction, and that's why you get the unexploded ordnance, which causes the civilian casualties. He does stuff like that. I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, but he's pretty good at it. Yeah, one YouTuber I used to like, but I don't anymore, was Legal. I don't like him anymore.
He's pretty good, like on the like the historical stuff. Like, he's got some really good videos on like Leopold and Loeb. The one where the couple, rigged up the shotgun in their bedroom to get the burglar and things like that. But when it comes to modern stuff, I mean, he is just such a well, I mean, first of all, he's not even a trial lawyer.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, he's like a copyright lawyer. It's his job basically, to look up stuff and see if it's legal to do. Like, he doesn't act like, I mean, yeah, he probably experienced training as a trial lawyer when he went to law school, but he doesn't actually practice it,
But I mean, it's like he is so biased, and yet he won't engage with like any of the other law tubers.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of Law by Mike?
I haven't seen that one.
There's a lot of interesting tips.
Another problem too with a lot of these law lawyers, and legal is especially guilty of it, is that unfortunately when they talk about thinking like a lawyer, they think too much in the fact that they fall for the same fallacy that's been plaguing the modern day legal system, is that they always focus on the law being broken, that never do they stop to question, wait a minute, should this offense be a law to begin with?
Nick Rekieta does a lot of that, and I think he's basically an anarchist, because he has a whole taxation of theft video and all that, where he basically takes an anarcho-capitalist position.
I mean, kind of like going back to my case. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity to make the argument because I was advised to take a plea bargain. And before you asked, this wasn't a public attorney. This was actually a really good lawyer that my mom and I scrapped up enough cash to hire, and he was pretty good. And he took the plea deal, and from what I understand, he was a pretty good lawyer. And if you're hiring a pretty darn good lawyer, and he's saying you should probably just deal, it's probably best just to take the deal for it. But yeah, he said that, but I never got a chance to argue my case in court. But the problem is that I was being charged for a crime, and yeah, one could argue that what I did was against the law, but The problem is that it was a stupid law, you know.
Yeah.
Like fun
I
fact,
wonder if you would have fared better now because you got the Bruin decision. You've got I forget what it is, but there was another one that was a really good decision for people accused of like domestic violence and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Fun fact, you know, shortly after I was released on bail, you know what happened? That decision came up where they said where the Supreme Court basically said, even if the person, you know, is being accused of a crime, until they're actually convicted, you can't confiscate their weapons. But it was too late.
I think you can confiscate. You can confiscate the weapon that was allegedly used, and of course you can compensate. You can confiscate, but you can't just take all of their weapons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did get most of my weapons back, but unfortunately, I had to sell them to my aunt because I'm not allowed to carry them. You know.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Because legally, I cannot own a gun in the state of Wisconsin, but I did ask my lawyer, can I own my gun rights back? He's like, here, let me hang up. And he contacted the ATF themselves, and he gave them all the details of my case. And you know what the ATF said? They said, we don't see a reason why your client should lose his gun rights. But nope, I looked it up. It's a Wisconsin state law. You know.
Well, yeah, ATF is federal. They don't have anything to do with the state.
Yeah. But it is unfortunate, you know.
Yeah.
I still have that paperwork because my plan is to take this you know, once I get the money, I'm gonna hire another lawyer and maybe try to take my you know, my argument to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, because with all these cases, maybe they can take a look at my case and say, yeah, this law he broke is unconstitutional, it's against the state constitution, it's against the American Constitution, just let him go. But that's gonna be a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it'll be expensive. Yeah.
Vast majority of I'm assuming the vast majority of things the ATF deals with are the firearms part, right?
Yeah.
No, they do the alcohol and tobacco and everything else do. Yeah.
That's actually kind of funny too. That's actually a funny thing too, because it's like why do we have an ATF when alcohol and tobacco is legal? And actually, Brendan Ferreira did a really good video on this, and he exposed the ATF because people fail to realize when the ATF was first created, it was not what it is today. In fact, it was not a police or a law enforcement group. It was literally just an agency. It was literally just
it's a tax agency.
Yeah, it was a tax agency. It was basically set up to say, okay, you know, people can own automatic weapons, explosives, tobacco, and all that. They just have to pay certain taxes. And the ATF was set up just to handle all that. And then, but you know, just like the DEA, over time it evolved and mutated, and it became an unconstitutional authority force that it is today.
But it's like in my wife's store, they sell beer and wine, and there are all sorts of ATF regulations. Like if someone brings it up to the counter to check out and they won't show their card, or for whatever reason they decide they don't want, there's this whole list of ATF procedures she has to go before. She can't just like carry it back and put it on the shelf.
Oh yeah. I mean, people fail to realize the reason why bars and grocery stores will card you, even if it's pretty obvious, you know, you're over the age of 21, like you could be a wobbly old person. The reason why they still demand to see your ID is because they legally have to.
You have to, I think you have to look like you're older than 30, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, they legally have to, because if they're caught not doing it, they can get in serious trouble.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Brendan Ferreira did a pretty good video about the ATF, and he's just only further example about how unconstitutional the ATF is, because he even pointed this out. The only way the ATF could have gone from a tax agency to a law enforcement agency would have had to have been through an act of Congress, and that never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've seen that they're just making up.
Yeah.
Like they just made up the whole pistol brace thing. Congress never passed a thing that said that a pistol brace turns a pistol into a rifle. They just made that up.
Yeah, they brought that up. You know, if you're gonna legally redefine, you know, the laws of physics or whatever, and it's been brought up multiple times, it has to be through an act of Congress. It can't be a government agency going, we're gonna declare that blue is actually green. Nope. In order for that to happen, it has to be through an act of Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, but
I mean, it's just the separate co-equal branches thing.
yeah, you know.
You can't go outside your own branch and do the job of another branch.
Yeah, you know. I mean, I've seen some people, you know, argue saying it's like, saying that's why no matter who you vote for as president, it's not going to matter because Congress can still do it. Well, to be fair, though, you know, if we actually had a quote unquote decent president, because, like, for instance, if Gary Johnson was elected, so many people were like, oh, Gary Johnson wouldn't have been able to do anything because, you know, Congress would still have all that. Oh, he could do a lot of things. He would just do the same thing he did to the state Congress of New Mexico. It's like every time they try to do something, he'll just veto it.
Well, and Congress is a bunch of cowards.
Yeah.
They don't want to declare war. They say, well, we gave the president authorization so that if the war goes badly, they don't, get the blame.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think that's the reason why they do that is because they don't want to admit they voted for war. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how Hillary Clinton all that weaseled their way out when you ask them.
Exactly.
When you ask them,
exactly
you ask them, well, you said you're against the Iraq war, but yet you voted for it. She'd probably go, well, no, I voted in favor to give the president, powers to deploy military action, but I never actually voted for war. But it's like, that's basically what declaring war is.
Yeah.
I remember during the 2016 Libertarian debates, when Gary Johnson was asked if he wanted driver's licenses, he's like, hey, I'd like to see some competency before, and then he got booed, and then he tried to win the crowd back by saying, look, when I was governor, I vetoed a whole lot of bills. I vetoed a hair cutting license, for example. That was just funny.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there was like an interview he did. I don't know if it was with John Stossel, but like he was talking about like a lot of the bills he vetoed, and he said some of the laws that came up, they were so ridiculous. Like there was one law that said it would have mandated that if you want a dog, you have to walk it, a certain amount of hours. And not only was that unconstitutional because of that, he also pointed out, how the heck are you going to enforce that law?
Yeah.
Are you going to send police officers to every single dog owner saying, are you walking your dog today? Because, that's another thing with a lot of those laws that a lot of people aren't realizing is like, even if the law, does have some good intentions, how the frick are you going to enforce it,
Yeah, the enforcement can be worse than breaking the law. This is why I don't get why it's like, okay, I pulled someone over, for whatever infraction. You've got their, you got their license plate. You've looked at their, you've run their license and everything. Now they've taken off running, driving, they've driven away from you. Why engage them on a high-speed chase that has such a high likelihood of loss of life? You already got their stuff. Just let them go and then put out a warrant for them.
Fun fact, that's actually what police departments used to do, believe it or not. There used to be a point where if you drove carelessly and recklessly, they would actually tell you to call off. They would say, listen, don't bother. We've got the car details. Just call it off. It's too dangerous for civilians. But nowadays, a lot of governments are saying, nope, you got to chase that guy down.
I think a lot of them are just, they were raised on, movies, Die Hard and all those, like, oh boy, my chance to do a high-speed car chase.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, and I actually have heard this from some cops, the irony is that, because, with all these school shootings and all that, they're always like, why aren't the police doing anything to stop them? And I've actually heard from some foreign police departments that have quit for this exact reason. It's because the irony is that we can't be like, those cops in the films, no joke, even if we're like on the scene and we can theoretically take care of the situation, we're literally told, okay, stand down and wait for backup. Okay, backup arrives. What do? Okay, set up a perimeter and wait for more backup. Okay, now what? Okay, got a perimeter set up, try to talk to the person. The person's already committing a crime and they made it clear they don't want to talk. Okay, let's discuss it with SWAT. Okay. Okay, SWAT says they'll handle it, but they're going to take him out through a sniper fire, so just stand down and don't let him escape. Let the sniper take care of him. I mean, it's one mass shooting that gets overlooked, that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and I think it's because it makes the police look really bad. It's you've heard of the San Ysidro shooting?
Which one was that?
San Ysidro, that was where that crazy guy shot up a McDonald's.
Was that the one where everyone was just hiding under the tables and he was just walking casually around?
Oh,
and
yeah,
shooting?
yeah. Yeah, he was doing that. Yeah, they were James Huberty, they were hiding under the table and they were crying, and he was just walking around shooting people. And there were multiple calls to the police department. But they made a huge error because one, the dispatcher gave the wrong McDonald's, and when they arrived and assessed the situation, even though they could clearly see there was one person in there, because the guy was using multiple guns and they could hear the different gunshots, they thought, holy crap, there's more than 3 gunners in there. Let's not go in there. Let's just surround the area and prevent them from escaping. And by the time SWAT arrived with a sniper and killed them, a lot of innocent people were gone.
Yeah.
It also changed, how we view, the way mental health dispatchers are taught to handle cases, because a couple days prior, before he carried out the shooting, he realized, you know what, maybe the problem is me, maybe there's something mentally wrong with me, and my hatred for humanity is my fault. So he tried getting mental health consultation, but the receptionist didn't help him, and they interviewed the receptionist, although they kept her name anonymously, and they asked her, why didn't you hook him up with a lawyer, with a doctor? And she said, well, he was so calm over the phone that I thought, he was a non-emergency, so I put him as non-emergency.
How long was that? Like 90 minutes or something like that?
Well, I don't remember how long it was, but I mean, it was like, it wasn't like gunfire going off. The guy was just like casually walking around. Then he'd look and then just casually shoot. Then he'd walk around a little bit more and see if he could, just look around and then shoot. I mean, it was just.
That sounds like a lot like the Luby's cafeteria.
Oh yeah, it was like the Luby's restaurant. But yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it showed. I mean, honestly, I think that's the reason.
That's what happens when people are disarmed, though.
Yeah,
In the McDonald's one, there was someone who was a gun owner, but the city had passed some kind of ordinance, and she's like, "Okay, I can't, take my gun," and she just said she remembered hiding under the table, thinking, "Why, oh, why did I let myself be disarmed?"
That was Luby's, not McDonald's.
Oh, that was Luby's?
Yeah, that was Luby's. That was that lady, because she later went into politics because she lost her parents because of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
because she was a law-abiding she was a law-abiding citizen, and she obeyed the law. And the result was when the Luby's incident happened, she literally watched her parents get shot to death, and it was really sad. Because what's really sad, because she describes it in great detail, was after her father was shot and killed, he was clearly dead, and she found an escape route, and she said, "Come on, Mom, let's get out of here." And her mom was like, "I'm not leaving your father behind, even though he was dead." And she literally was holding him crying, and the gunman just went up to her and just shot her dead right there.
I find it interesting that Texas is viewed as one of the most lax states when it comes to gun stuff, and yet it wasn't it just like the 90s, like that recent, when the laws were incredibly strict?
Oh yeah, so many people say we need to bring back the 1994 assault weapons ban, and there's 3 words that show that the assault weapons ban was an absolute failure. 3 words: North Hollywood shootout.
I can't even think of another incident where automatic weapons were used in a shooting.
Yeah.
Well, they were saying Mandalay Bay, but I don't know. Did they ever officially release that? What was actually used?
They were bump stocks, which didn't really.
Well, no, they ended up claiming that it was bump stock so they could ban them. But he had fully automatic weapons there, and I don't remember if they ever released what he was actually shooting.
Was that the New Vegas shooter?
Because a lot of the gun experts who were listening to the audio are saying that gunfire is too regular for it to be a bump stock.
Oh yeah, I mean
that would have to be automatic.
Are you talking about the Vegas shooter?
The Mandalay Bay shooter.
That is a little sketchy, because it's like all the pictures of the guns only showed the AR-15s with the bump stocks, yet the report says he had things like AK-47s and all that. And many gun experts were saying, why the F would he need a bump stock when he has an AK-47, when an AK-47 can easily be converted to full automatic using simple machinist tools?
Well, and they were also saying like the weapon was on a bipod, But a bipod is there to cut down on recoil, and that would stop a bump stock from working.
Yeah. So yeah, either the New Vegas shooter was the most incompetent gun person ever, which to be fair wouldn't surprise me, or yeah, there's something going on,
Yeah, I mean, there's just
why did he have so many guns? Like, is he that afraid they're all gonna jam or something?
I don't know. It was just a cartoonish amount of guns.
Well, I mean, Charles Whitman had a lot of guns too. I mean, he even bought like pistols with him, even though he was gonna snipe people from a clock tower. But yeah. So with Charles Whitman,
that was the Batman movie shooter. He had started off with some kind of semi-automatic rifle, and he got like 3 rounds out and it jammed, and he swapped over to a handgun.
Yeah, that's actually something that they talk about, because it's like, oh, this guy had a drum round, and that's why he killed so many people. But they ignore the fact that he fired like half of it and it jammed, and he couldn't undo it, so he switched to his pistol. Yeah. Same thing with Sandy Hook too, if I recall correctly. Like, everyone blamed the AR-15 he had, but if I recall correctly, he really only used the AR-15 to shoot down the door, and after that, he resorted to a pistol.
I just find it hilariously stupid that the idea that if we restrict magazine size, that's going to do a damn thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because like shortly after that happened, everyone was talking about magazine restrictions. Then there was that mass shooting, in Texas, and the media at first was all about it. Then they found out, what weapon did he use? Oh, he used a revolver, and then the media just went quiet.
Yeah.
It's a high capacity revolver.
Yeah.
Of course, the shooter at Parkland used 10 rounds. They say reducing the size to like 10 rounds. Well, most of these have been with 10 rounds, including the Parkland and Columbine one. The latter didn't even use rifles. It was shotguns and a Tech 9 and something else.
Not to mention, you also have to remember this: when you have a disarmed society and no one's fighting back, and the police are minutes away when seconds count, there's really nothing stopping the shooter from doing that. I mean, like you said, there's been cases where mass shooters, like you said, like they literally will like stop and like they'll get something to drink or something, then they go back to shooting.
And I think a lot of people think that this is happening like so much because the media covers it so much, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't go to the Walmart today.
Don't get me wrong, I am absolutely against censorship and stopping the media from reporting on these things, but I do kind of agree that we are kind of seeing a trend that maybe if we stop reporting on mass shootings the way we do, there is a possibility that they might happen on a lesser frequency, because to be fair, a common trait we see with a lot of these shooters is that they tend to be narcissists and they want the attention, And look, I'm not saying don't report the shooting. Like, don't say, oh yeah, no shooting didn't occur. Like, don't be denial. Just like a lot of people said, it's like, don't say who the guy's name was. Don't release his manifesto. Don't make a political idea about it. Just say, this was a horrible thing. This guy was, this guy or person was a sick, twisted individual, and if he's dead, good riddance. If he's arrested, well, let's let the court figure out what to do with him. That's it, I mean, if I recall correctly, the New Zealand shooter at Christchurch, that's what he wanted. He wanted people to talk about his shooting, yeah.
And he wanted people to freak out and pass gun control laws, and
he wanted that. It's like, way to go. You just helped the criminal,
Yeah.
I mean, I've actually heard from some defense experts say, you know what America's reaction to 9/11 should have been? Nothing. Because that's what the terrorists wanted. They wanted people to panic. They wanted people to be scared. They wanted America to end up in a state of paranoia. That's the whole point of terrorism.
Take that money and put it in to rebuilding the towers exactly as they were.
Yeah.
Because that whole rebuilding was a joke. It took them how long to build, the Freedom Tower? And
yeah, it reminds me of what that one British comedian said. It's like, you Americans should have just did what we Brits did after the 7/7 bus attacks. After the terrorists, attacked a bus station and killed like 7 innocent people. Not a lot, not as much as 9/11, but it was still a big event. What were British people doing? they were complaining that the buses were delayed the next day.
Yeah.
That's how you Americans should have reacted. You should have been the very next day after 9/11. Jesus Christ, why are all the planes being delayed and canceled? Because it is sad to think about, but when you really think about it, that is what the terrorists want. They want you to cry. They want you to be scared. That's how they play their game.
I think Ron Paul said something about Osama bin Laden was happy that we started the war because then he can kill the soldiers so much easier.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, it's after 10 o'clock, so any final thoughts y'all want to get out? I think we lost Daniel.
Okay. Yeah, I think he left, so. Okay, good night, everyone.
All right, see you, Chris.
Yeah, see you guys.
Bye, Sid.
All
See
right.
you, Shane.
See ya. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone who watched especially on Odyssey and Rumble, because we need lots more people to move over to the alternative platforms. Thank you so very much for watching. Please remember to donate to Apagosity.tv. Until next time, stay strong and be free.